Imagine a completely sealed, locked room. You put 4 people inside, you lock that door, you walk away, you come back an hour later, you unlock it, and the room is empty. No hidden tunnels, no trapdoors, no scuff marks, not even dust disturbed. Just empty space.
Right, the classic locked room mystery.
Exactly. Now take that room and expand it until it's almost the size of a continent. And instead of walls, you're surrounded by a biological engine that is actively hostile to human life.
That is the perfect way to frame this. We are so used to these kinds of puzzles in fiction, you know, Agatha Christie, that kind of thing. But when it happens in the real world, and the room is the Amazon basin, the implications stop being a fun little puzzle and they start becoming a genuine nightmare.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we aren't just looking at a disappearance, we're looking at an erasure. We're going through a stack of files here on the Sierra Pelada Mission family, a case from 1961 that, quite frankly, shouldn't be possible. Not according to the laws of physics as we understand them.
It really shouldn't. And I think we need to be very clear right from the start. We are not talking about a generic plane crash in the jungle story.
No.
Planes crash in the Amazon.
Bro.
It's a tragic but known risk. But when a plane crashes, it leaves a scar. It breaks trees. It burns fuel. It creates a debris field. This case, it's defined by the absolute total absence of everything.
That's the hook that really grabbed me when I was doing the research to this idea. Someone termed the anomaly of nothingness. But before we get to the Vanishing Act itself, we really have to understand the stage. You've got some notes here that I found fascinating. On the Amazon as an antagonist, not just a setting, but a character in the story.
Right, because to understand why this case is so baffling, you have to sort of strip away all the romanticism, you know, the lungs of the earth, National Geographic imagery.
The beautiful, lush paradise.
Exactly. The Amazon is a living labyrinth. We're talking 5.5 million square kilometers of the most aggressive and competitive biology on the entire planet.
Someone described it to me once as a digestion system.
That's a perfect analogy. It consumes history. It swallows things whole. And in 1961, it was even more impenetrable than it is today. You have to remember, there was no GPS, no satellite phones. If you went in, you were navigating by a magnetic compass and whatever landmarks you could see below.
Which, from the air, is just a carpet of green.
An endless carpet of green. And here's the kicker about that specific region near Sierra Pelada. The iron deposits in the ground, the geology of the area, it's so dense that it can actually throw off magnetic compasses.
You're kidding me.
Not at all. It's a known phenomenon. Your primary instrument for navigation could just start spinning, telling you north is south, east is west.
So you're flying blind over a canopy that looks identical for 1,000 miles in every direction, and the one tool you have to tell you where you're going might be actively lying to you.
And if you go down in that, you aren't just lost. You're in an environment that actively works to decompose you, to dissolve you, to reclaim you. But that usually takes time. In the case of the Sierra Pelada family, it's like it happened instantly.
Okay, so let's introduce the people who flew into this maw. The files call them the Believers, a missionary family. We have a father, a mother, and 2 kids, both under 10 years old.
Yeah, and this is absolutely vital context. We need to profile them so they don't just become another statistic, another name on a missing persons file. In the early 60s, there was this huge push of evangelical missions into the Brazilian interior. These were not tourists. They weren't adventurers or thrill seekers looking for El Dorado. They were true believers. The father, in the mission logs, is described as this deeply pragmatic man, but completely spiritually driven. This was his life's work.
And the mother wasn't just, tagging along for the ride. The notes say she was a trained medical aide and a teacher.
Correct. They were a completely functional, self-sufficient unit out there. And you have to think about the logistics of that. You're living in a place with malaria, with yellow fever, with jaguars, with anacondas, and just crushing isolation. To survive that for years, which they already had, you have to be competent. You have to be incredibly tough.
But then there are the kids. 2 children, under 10. That, for me, changes the stakes completely. It's one thing to risk your own life for a cause you believe in. It's a whole other thing to strap 2 kids into a single-engine plane and fly them over the most dangerous terrain on Earth.
It is. It's a very difficult thing to wrap your head around from our modern perspective, but you have to try and see it through the lens of their specific worldview. They operated under this paradigm of divine protection.
They thought God would keep them safe.
In their eyes, they weren't being reckless. They were insured by God. They truly believed that because their intent was altruistic, they were there to save souls, to provide medicine, to educate, that the environment itself would sort of yield to their mission, that they were shielded.
And that's the tragic irony at the heart of this, isn't it? The Amazon is completely indifferent to your intent. It doesn't care if you're a saint or a smuggler. If your engine quits, gravity takes over. The laws of physics don't care about your faith.
Precisely. It's this head-on collision between human hope and an unforgiving biological reality. And that collision happened in early 1961.
Okay, so let's walk through the final journey, the logistics of it. They're taking off from a small, established riverside mission, and their destination is a settlement near Sarapalata. Now, stop me if I'm wrong here, but Sarapalata became famous, or infamous, much later, right?
Infamous is the word, yeah. In the 1980s, it became the site of the most chaotic, hellish gold rush in modern history. If you've ever seen those photos by Sebastian Salgado, the ones that look like an anthill of tens of thousands of men covered in mud, climbing out of a giant pit.
Yeah, they look like something out of Dante's Inferno.
That's Sarapalata. But in 1961, before the gold rush, it was what they called a frontier zone.
What does frontier zone actually mean in this context? Is that just a nice way of saying uncharted?
It basically means it was the edge of the map. It was known for 3 things: an extremely dense triple canopy forest. I mean, like a literal roof over your head that blocks out the sun.
Right.
Violent river currents that could change by the hour. And rumors of uncontacted tribes who were, for very understandable reasons, hostile to outsiders. It was considered a red zone even for the most experienced bush pilots.
And what are they flying? Do we know the make of the plane?
The report doesn't specify the exact model, but given the era and the mission profile, it was almost certainly a high-wing monoplane, something like a Cessna 180, or maybe a Piper Super Cub. These are sturdy, reliable planes, workhorses of the jungle.
But they're not jumbo jets.
Oh no, they are strictly VFR visual flight rules, which means you fly by looking out the window, you hit a thick cloud bank, or if the sun goes down, you are in serious, serious trouble.
And they took off late in the day.
This is what many investigators point to as the first critical error. They departed in the late afternoon. And in the tropics, near the equator, twilight isn't this long, gentle thing like it is in Europe or North America. It doesn't linger. The sun drops like a stone. 1 minute it's day, and then 15 minutes later it is pitch black.
You're flying straight into a void.
A total void. And there are no city lights to guide you. No highways, no frame of reference. It's just black forest and black sky, and they merge into one. You lose the horizon line completely.
Spatial disorientation.
It sets in almost immediately. Your inner ear starts telling you you're banking when you're flying straight or climbing when you're descending. It's a known killer of pilots.
But the radio check-in. This is the part of the story that just haunts me. The father, the pilot, he calls in.
Yeah.
And he doesn't sound panicked. He doesn't sound like a man who can't tell up from down.
Conditions manageable. That was the exact phrase recorded in the log. We're slightly off schedule, but conditions are manageable. We should arrive by morning.
Manageable. That is such a loaded word in retrospect. It sounds like he's just troubleshooting a minor issue, maybe a bit of a headwind or an engine that's running a little rough.
It implies agency. It implies control. He thought he was actively solving the problem. Usually when we listen to black box recordings from crashes, we hear that moment of realization. We hear the terrain pull up alarms. We hear the panic in their voices. Here, we just have confidence. He seemed to think he had it under control right up until the second he didn't.
And then, just silence. The radio goes dead. The sun comes up the next morning. no plane arrives at the destination.
And this is where the timeline gets excruciatingly slow and painful, because in the Amazon in 1961, a missed arrival doesn't trigger immediate panic.
Right. Things happen.
Radios fail all the time, the humidity, the conditions. Vacuum tubes blow out, you get massive atmospheric static from storms hundreds of miles away. So the people waiting for them at the mission probably thought, oh, they must have landed at a backup strip to wait out the night. We'll hear from them in the morning.
They gave them the benefit of the doubt.
For 24 hours. Then for 48 hours. Then the dread starts to creep in. Because even if the radio is dead, a plane is a loud, visible object. Someone on the ground, a hunter, a fisherman on the river, someone should have seen them fly over. After a week with absolutely no word, the official classification changes from overdue to missing, and the search begins.
And this wasn't a half-hearted search, was it? The mission community must have rallied.
Oh, absolutely. This was a mission family. The network mobilized instantly. They had search planes from other missions. The Brazilian Air Force got involved. They had ground teams in canoes moving up the riverbanks. They hired local indigenous trackers who knew the forest better than anyone. They were methodically scouring the planned flight path.
And this brings us back to what you called the locked room.
The anomaly of nothingness, yes. Let's really drill down into this because it's the core of the mystery. If a plane of that size hits the jungle canopy, what should we see?
I mean, a big hole, right? Broken trees.
A massive hole. Picture a 2,000-pound object made of aluminum and steel hitting solid trees at over 100 miles per hour. It shears the treetops off. It creates a gash in the canopy, a scar, they call it. And that scar turns brown as the leaves die. It's highly visible from the air for weeks, even months.
And what about fire? There must have been fuel in the tanks.
Almost always. They were mid-flight, so their tanks would have been at least half full of aviation fuel. A crash of that magnitude almost always triggers a post-impact fire. And while greenwood doesn't burn easily, avgas burns incredibly hot and produces thick, black smoke. In the Amazon, where the air is usually still, that smoke rises straight up like a column. It's a beacon.
Okay, so the search planes would have seen a scar or smoke. What if they went down in the river?
If they'd hit the river, you'd get a rainbow-colored oil slick on the surface. You'd get debris. Things inside the plane seat cushions are designed to be buoyant. Luggage, clothing, papers, they float. And the rivers in the Amazon are like highways. Things wash downstream and eventually end up on a sandbar or caught in some reeds.
So to find nothing. No scar in the canopy, no smoke reports, no oil, no cushions, no metal fragments.
It's statistically bizarre. It's an anomaly. It's almost harder to process than finding a wreck. If you find a wreck, you have a tragedy. You might have bodies, you have an answer, you have closure. This is evaporation.
It denies the physics of the event itself.
It completely denies it. And that denial is what opens the door to the psychological horror of the situation. The searchers weren't just looking for a lost plane anymore. They were looking for proof that the world still made sense.
And then, just when they're about to give up all hope, the jungle decides to play a game. It gives them one single clue: the ghost crate. This part of the story, I have to admit, it gave me legitimate chills when I was reading the files.
It's the detail that turns this from a standard mystery into a genuine ghost story. Weeks into the search, all hope is fading, and a local hunter from an indigenous community comes out of the bush. He's found something, a mission supply crate. It's wooden, and it's stamped with the family's mission insignia.
So, debris. Finally. That proved there was a crash.
That's what the search team thought. They must have felt this huge surge of, well, maybe not relief, but something, a lead. They get ready to rush to the location. But the hunter tells them something very strange. He says the crate wasn't smashed, it wasn't burned, it wasn't waterlogged.
It was pristine.
The word he used, translated, was unharmed, undamaged. Think about what that implies. If a crate falls out of a plane from 2,000 feet, it shatters on impact. It explodes. If it's inside a plane that flies into a mountainside, it's crushed into splinters. This crate was sitting in a small, remote clearing, as if someone had gently set it down on the ground.
Just placed there. That's the quote from the report.
Just placed there. And there were no tracks around it, no boot prints in the mud, no drag marks, no blood, no plane wreckage anywhere nearby, just a perfectly intact box in the middle of the immense wilderness.
That is just deeply, deeply unsettling. It suggests what's the logical conclusion? That they survived, landed the plane somewhere, unloaded one single box, and then took off again. It makes no sense.
That's one of the wilder theories. But if they landed safely, why leave the crate behind? And more importantly, why not stay with the crate in that clearing? Why not build a signal fire? Why not wait for rescue?
And the kicker, the twist in the story. When the organized search team finally got to the location the hunter described,
The crate was gone.
oh, gone.
Vanished. As if it had never been there. And the locals, including the hunter who found it, refused to talk about it anymore. The source notes, quote, a local elder as saying, through a translator, the forest does not give back what it chooses to take. It wasn't just that the crate was missing, it was that the locals were suddenly afraid of it. They treated the entire event like a bad omen, something you don't talk about.
It feels like the jungle was taunting them. Like it was showing them one card from the deck and then hiding the rest of the deck forever.
A deliberate act of misdirection by something.
So we have to try and apply some logic to this, even if the logic is straining at the seams. Let's go through the main theories, the rational explanations first.
Okay, so theory 1, the baseline theory, has to be the plane crash. It's Occam's razor, gravity is undefeated, a small plane in a hostile environment. We have to assume as a starting point that they crashed.
But the primary counter evidence is the complete lack of a scar, the lack of debris.
Right. So the only way the crash theory works physically is if they experienced what's called a law dart crash, a complete vertical dive, nose first, straight down.
So they wouldn't shear off treetops, they'd just punch a hole.
Exactly. They'd punch a relatively small hole, and this is a huge if they happen to hit a deep vegetation-covered swamp or a bog, it's theoretically possible that the plane could be swallowed whole by the mud and water, instantly extinguishing any fire. It's physically possible. But the odds of hitting that one specific type of terrain in that one specific way without leaving a single trace on the surface, they're astronomical.
So it's possible, but incredibly improbable.
Vanishingly improbable.
Okay. What about theory 2? Hostile tribes. We know for a fact they were flying over uncontacted territory.
This is the classic Heart of Darkness theory. They land, or they crash land relatively intact, and are immediately captured or killed by a local tribe that is hostile to outsiders. It's a grim thought, but it would explain the missing bodies.
But it doesn't explain the missing plane.
That's the problem with that theory. A tribe, even a very resourceful one, can kill a family. They can hide bodies in a way that they would never be found. But what do you do with a Cessna? It's a 2,000-pound machine made of metal and fabric. You can't eat it. You can't burn it effectively. You certainly can't bury it with stone or wooden tools.
Well,
Usually when planes go down in tribal territories, the metal frame just sits there for 50 years. It becomes a landmark. It becomes part of the landscape. A tribe cannot erase a plane from existence.
so we're stuck again. The crash theory explains the plane's destruction, but fails on the lack of debris. The tribe theory explains the missing people, but fails on the missing plane.
Which leads us to the darker human theory, the one that involves not indigenous people, but other outsiders. Human malice. The cleaners.
This circles back to Serra Pelada and its reputation as a Wild West frontier even before the big gold rush.
Right. Even before the 1980s, there were people out there. Illegal prospectors, smugglers, people operating way outside the law who really, really didn't want to be seen by anyone, especially not missionaries who might report them. The theory goes that the family saw something they shouldn't have seen from the air, an illegal airstrip, a drug smuggling operation, maybe even a slave labor camp for illegal mining.
The wrong place at the wrong time?
The absolute wrong place at the wrong time. And in this scenario, they were either forced down or, even more chillingly, shot down.
That would explain the pristine crate, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If they were forced to land on an illegal strip, the crate could have been unloaded perfectly intact.
It's actually the only theory that really accounts for the crate being undamaged. If the plane landed on a hidden strip, was unloaded, and then the family was, well, disposed of to eliminate the witnesses.
But again, you come back to the same problem. Where is the plane?
That's the $64,000 question. To make an entire airplane disappear, you need heavy machinery. You need to be able to chop it into pieces, bury it deep in a pre-dug pit, or fly it somewhere else and sink it in a deep river. Would a ragtag group of illegal miners in the jungle in 1961 have the sophistication and the equipment to completely forensically clean a site like that?
It implies a level of coordinated conspiracy that just seems unlikely for a remote jungle camp. It sounds more like a state-sponsored operation.
It's possible, but it requires a lot of ifs, a lot of assumptions about their capabilities.
So we've basically run out of rational human explanations that don't have huge holes in them. We have to turn to the environment itself. Theory 4, which you've labeled, the environment as predator. You have a quote here from a veteran jungle tracker that says the Amazon can swallow aircraft whole.
This is a really interesting perspective. It's about the sheer rate of decomposition and regrowth in that environment. We can't view the jungle as a static backdrop like in a movie. It's a dynamic living thing. It moves. In the wet season, some species of bamboo can grow nearly a meter a day. Vines will explode into any open space, any patch of sunlight.
So the scar we talked about earlier,
Yeah,
it heals itself.
it heals terrifyingly fast. If the search planes missed the crash site by a few miles in the first week, by the fourth week, that hole in the canopy might have been completely covered over with new growth. The jungle simply closes the door behind its victims.
It camouflages its own violence.
Perfectly put. And then there's the decomposition on the forest floor. The combination of extreme heat, humidity, insects, fungi, a biological material, including human remains, can be broken down to bone in a matter of days. If they died in the crash, the forest would have reclaimed the biological evidence in less than a week. So it's entirely plausible that the plane could be sitting there right now, completely encased in 10 feet of vines, invisible from just 5 feet away.
That's a formidable thought. That you could walk right past it.
You could literally step on the wing and not even know it was there.
But there's one more layer to this. The layer we, as modern people, usually dismiss out of hand.
Yeah.
Theory 5. The unspoken theory. The local lore.
This is where we have to take off our Western rationalist hats for a moment and just listen to the people who have lived in that land for 10,000 years. The records show that the local tribes actively avoided the specific region of that flight path.
They called it Forbidden Sky Paths.
Forbidden sky paths. And they spoke of places on the ground where people, and I quote, disappear between moments.
Disappear between moments. That is such a specific, poetic, and utterly terrifying phrase. It's not just evil spirits.
No, it's much more complex than that. It's not just spirits. It's a concept of liminality, a belief that there are geographic spots, actual places on the map where reality is thin, where the rules of physics are porous or don't apply in the same way.
Like a portal, a glitch in the matrix.
Or a severe, localized magnetic anomaly that affects not just compasses, but human perception, or something else entirely that we don't have a name for. To the locals, this wasn't a mystery. It was a known hazard. The logic was simple. You don't go there, because if you go there, you stop being here.
And of course, the authorities and the mission organization dismissed all of this as primitive superstition.
Of course they did, but look at the result. The outcome matches the lore perfectly. They didn't crash in a conventional sense. They didn't leave debris. They just stepped out of the moment.
It highlights this massive, tragic arrogance of the mission, doesn't it? They went in to save the land and its people, but they didn't respect or even try to understand the land's own mythology. They flew straight into a void they didn't even believe could exist.
And the void swallowed them. It adds this layer of almost Greek tragedy to the whole thing. The fatal flaw was their refusal to see the world as it was, in favor of how they believed it should be.
So 60 plus years later, where does that leave us? I mean, what's the official status of this case? This implies it's still an open wound.
It is. Officially, the case file remains open. No death certificates were ever issued for the family. Legally, in a strange way, they are still just missing. They are in limbo. There are no graves. There's no memorial site because there is no site to memorialize.
4 names on a list in a dusty file cabinet and a registration number for a plane that no longer exists.
And a jungle that holds a secret and refuses to speak.
It really forces us to confront the limits of our own reach, of our own knowledge, doesn't it? We map the ocean floor with sonar, we send rovers to map the surface of Mars, but we still have these blank spots on our own planet where 4 people in a 2,000-pound machine can just exit.
I think the Amazon serves as a constant, humbling reminder that we are not at the top of the food chain in every environment. We are guests on this planet, and sometimes guests get evicted without notice.
So for everyone listening tonight, here's the chilling question to maybe take to bed with you. What is actually more terrifying?
That's the core dilemma of this whole story.
Is it more terrifying that they crashed? A violent, mechanical, tragic, but ultimately understandable end. An engine failure, a pilot error, a storm.
Or is it more terrifying that they didn't? That for some unknown reason, the laws of probability and physics suspended themselves just for a moment, just long enough to erase a family. That total erasure is a thing that can actually happen in our world.
I think I prefer the crash. The crash, as horrible as it is, makes sense within our framework of reality. The erasure that implies the world isn't as solid or as knowable as we pretend it is.
Somewhere in that 5.5 million square kilometers of green labyrinth, the jungle remembers them.
But it's not talking.
No.
He keeps its secrets.
That's it for this deep dive. Keep your compass calibrated, stay safe, and maybe, just maybe, stay out of the sky after sunset.
And always listen to the locals. They probably know something you don't.
We'll see you next time.